couple of things have helped me and a lot very recently. One is an understanding of like what one actually has to do in order to build habits and change the brain, like physiologically what goes on. And there's a really great show with Dr. Andrew Huberman from I think he's at Stanford, but he was on Rich Roll, he was on Joe Rogan, and he talked about the process of neuroplasticity and changing your brain. And it connected a lot of dots for me because I realized that I was, maybe like subconsciously or just like I was doing these things that kind of you need to do in order to change your brain. And what he says, and paraphrasing it and potentially butchering it, I hope not, but he says there's two things you have to have. You have to have periods of intense focus and periods of deep rest and relaxation. And when I changed, a couple, maybe 18 months, 2 years ago, I changed my main health habit focus other than my streak. I changed that to sleep. And I don't do early workouts anymore. Yeah. I just don't do it. My body doesn't like it. My ankles and knees don't like it. I personally don't like it. It pisses me off. And I would much rather work out in the dark after work than in the morning before work. And thus I started pushing things back. I prioritized sleep, and that changed my life. And knowing that you have to have these periods of agitation. And so when you feel like shit or you don't want to do it or you've got the resistance to it, Stephen Pressfield in Turning Pro talks about that resistance, right? And the resistance to your art, the resistance to your
leaning
craft.
into the resistance.
Yeah, same thing with combo. When you're in the shit, if you can breathe and smile, you can get through it because it's only a period of time. Everything ends, right? It's just a period of time. And so, when Dr. Huberman said, you have these periods of intense focus and then intense relaxation, and the agitation on the front end is caused by a release in adrenaline or epinephrine, norepinephrine, and in order to actually learn, if you stick with that period of frustration, like let's say you're like, I'm going to study Spanish for an hour, and the first to start sucks. You're like, fuck, you cleaned your house. And you've had 4 sips of water or 4 glasses of water. Yeah, exactly. You're like, all right, I'm going to do this. Yeah. And you sit down, you open the book and you're like, fuck these flashcards, but once you get that, if you can stick through that and get to the end and I call it fulfilling the contract you have with yourself or upholding the contract you made with yourself. I'm going to go on a 10-mile run and it could suck. I'm going to have ups and downs, but getting to that 10 miles or getting to that hour done, what happens is your body releases dopamine, which it buffers norepinephrine, it buffers adrenaline. It gives you that check. Okay, yeah. It's your body's reward system. And stacking those motherfuckers on top of one another
will change the pathway of your brain.
Changes everything, man. It literally changes the synapses, the neurons, the connections in your brain. And so, leaning into it and knowing that that's part of the process, like this agitation I feel, this frustration I feel, me feeling like shit, to start this workout or during this workout is part of it. There's also, you've got to realize that, you got to rest, right? You've got to know your body. Oh man, that feel like I could tweak something, knowing the difference between I should stop versus oh, come on, man. You can push through that little cramp or whatever it is. Knowing yourself is really important. But it's also not rule of law that if you feel like trash, you're going to perform like trash. I've had some of my best workouts and best races and experiences when at the start line or, beginning stages of it or middle of it, I don't feel good. And then I'm looking at my splits. I'm like, holy shit. I'm fucking flying or didn't want to start this and then end up having an amazing experience, so.
It's weird how that happens. There have been a few times back when I was playing baseball at Richmond where if I had $1,000 that I had to bet on the outcome of a game I was pitching, I would have been like, I feel so shitty today.
Yeah.
There's no shot in hell I get out of this without giving up 10 runs in 5 innings. And sometimes the times that I felt the shittiest, it just clicks. And maybe it's because I go into it knowing not to expect a lot.
Yeah, there's nothing to lose.
I'm I feel like shit. So if I give up 10 runs today, 5 runs, whatever, I felt like shit. I prepared during the week, but for whatever reason, I woke up, my arm felt like my shoulder was cranked or my elbow. And then there've been other times where I wake up and I'm like, damn, I've never felt better. And I go out and give up 6 runs. I'm like, what the fuck happened?
Right.
how it's weird how there can be a disconnect sometimes between the way that you feel and the way that you perform. But that's only more motivation to try to do things that you need to get done even when you don't feel like it, and kind of cure the anxiety with the action. And once you kind of get into the thick of it, there's nowhere else you would rather be. Once you get past that agitation state, once you get past, the first 5 minutes of a podcast, or the first 5 minutes of starting to write, or the first 5 minutes of a workout, there's literally no other place you'd rather be besides in the flow state of whatever it is that you're doing. It's just like the start of it. Like, I wish our brains were wired differently. It's like, why the fuck, whoever created us, couldn't they have made us like, yes, give me like the agitation.
I'm so excited to
like uncomfortable shit. Like, yes, I want that. I want to get punched in the face and run 10 miles. And like, but it's like a weird thing that you have to overcome and I'm overcoming this more and more every day, where the things that make you uncomfortable and the things that make you feel like shit a lot of times are good for you in the long term. The things that you never regret. Like, I'll never regret completing a workout. I'll never regret recording a podcast, even if it doesn't go the way I want to go. Like, I've learned something and I've grown in some way. And
that's because you've committed to the process of it. Yeah. And you understand that it is a process. And, it's so cliche, man. And it's kind of one of those things.
Cliche for a reason.
It's cliche for a reason. Yeah. And until someone actually experiences it, it's very easy to dismiss as cliche. But, doing those hard things consistently builds it's just like this internal knowing, like it's something that is, nobody can take that shit away from you. Like I know for a fact that, I've hit it 1,650 plus days in a row, and no one can take that shit from me. Like, there's a confidence that I have solely stemming from doing the work. That's it. Like, I didn't grow up a confident person. In many other aspects of my life, I'm not that, right? And the confidence that I have now is derived from knowing that I put in that work, and that is that's something I can control. Yeah. And I'm young, man. I'm 32 years old, so I got
at least 5 years left, dude. At least 5 or 6. Yeah.
I'm aiming for like
40 and I'm out.
Day 28,000 of this streak. You know? There's this guy, Ron Hill, I think it is. He's an Englishman. He competed in the Olympics. He ran in the 60s. And he had like a couple year-long streak before he even got to the Olympics. And his, he was good at running. His training, partner was like, "Oh, you can't be doing this shit every day," and or his coach or whatever. And so once he got done with the Olympics, he started a running streak. And I think he ran 1 mile every day, and he averaged 7 miles a day for something like 48 years, bro.
Jesus.
Years. And he ended up like breaking the streak at something like 52 or 53 years in. So
what a bitch.
What a bitch. Fucking legend.
Dude, that's fucking crazy.
Yeah. And so I look at my shit, I'm like, man, 4.5, I ain't shit. Just knowing that there's always levels to stuff, and it's fun to chase and see what you can do.